start thinking about how could we be intentional that we are doing what it talks about in Deuteronomy, that we're having spiritual conversations as we go. This does not have to be some crazy, you're not taking your kids to seminary. You are just making sure that you are intentionally putting God before them so that when you eat a really great meal, you say, "Oh, thank you, God, the giver of good gifts." That you're helping your kids, you're being intentional about your kids seeing God, knowing God, viewing the world through a biblical lens. I think that's the area, if I was going to encourage moms in anything, to just stop and say, what small change could I make in order to be more intentional with how we are growing our family spiritually? Hey moms, welcome back to the Gather Moms podcast. We are so glad that you're here with us in our Mom Struggles series. And today we are talking about a word that I think we all aspire to be, but also shrink in fear when we hear it.
Do we all aspire to be this word?
I think so. As a mom, you don't want to be haphazard in what you're doing. But the word we're talking about is intentionality.
It sounds so heavy.
It feels like a lot when you think about it.
Yes.
But when I think about what kind of mom I want to be, or kind of woman I want to be an intentional person. That I'm not just wasting my time or, spending my time frivolously.
It's not something I thought about before I became a mom, though. I never associated intentional with momming.
What do you mean?
I just
Until you became a mom, you didn't think about it?
No, because you're just like, oh, cool, we're having a baby.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of get thrown in this pool of survival. And then...
But there was probably some intention in you having a baby, you planned to do that, probably.
I mean, maybe.
Or you knew what you were doing when it happened. I don't know.
Isn't that funny when people talk about when you have your fourth or fifth kid? They're like, you know how that happens, right?
It's the worst joke. I don't know why people say that. I don't know. We say these dumb things that trigger people, and you're like, okay, I'm sorry.
Listen, that's why I pray for my mouth.
Yeah.
My mouth is sometimes unintentionally sarcastic.
Yeah.
And I need a little help.
Yeah. To be intentionally closing your mouth.
Intentionally closing my mouth, yes.
So I think when we think about intentionality, I think what the reason we shrink back from it is because we think of a mom or a person who is very prescriptive in their life. They've planned everything out. They know where they're going. They know how they're going to get there. Their days are fully scheduled. Nothing is dropping.
Yes.
And that's what I think of when I think of intentionality.
Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
When I think of intentional, I think of Excel spreadsheets.
And so then it becomes okay, well, forget it. If that's what it is to be intentional, I'm not going to do that. And so let's just take that one off the list of what I'm aiming for. When really intentionality is not this overscheduled, overly planned life. It is just simply, what I believe intentionality is just simply beginning with the end in mind.
Oh, that's such a good one.
So that you think about for your own life, you think about, okay, this is a little dark, but I think it's good that you think about at the end of my life, when people are standing there and talking about me.
That's another one of those things we say. What do you want people to say at your funeral?
But I think, how do you want your kids to talk about you at the end of your life? How do you want your friends to remember you? What do you want your life to be marked for? Because honestly, when you think about your days right now, and this is not for guilt, this is just to get us thinking, but do I want someone standing up at the end of my life and saying, you know what, she watched every show on Netflix? Is that
what... She got to the end of Netflix.
Yeah. She is the one, she found the end of Netflix. Is that what I want to be remembered for? Or she was in debt up to her eyeballs, but she always looked good, Or, she cooked amazing meals, but we had the most tense family dinners,
Yes.
Just thinking about when at the end of my life, what do I want to be remembered for? And so to begin with the end in mind. And I think that's just a question that's so good for us to stop and ask is, what kind of person am I becoming by the actions that I'm taking now? And is that the person that I want to be? And so if we just fast forward a little bit with, okay, I'm making these decisions daily. Is that going to put votes in the bank? Is that going to put deposits in the bank of me becoming the person I want to become? Or is that actually putting deposits in a bank to make me into being someone else, someone that I don't really want to be? Like, for example, if you want to be a person that lives at peace, and you want to say, I want my life to be marked by peace. I want to be a peaceful person. I want to live at peace with other people. But you're spending your time on Facebook getting stuck in the comments, fighting with people. You are, you get mad in traffic and you're honking. You hear about stuff on the news and it's keeping you up at night and you're having anxiety about it. Or maybe you're even watching the news and that's not healthy for you. But are you depositing things that are going to make you a more peaceful person or a more anxious person? So I think we just want to start thinking about, like, what decisions are we making that are helping contribute to who we want to be?
I think this should be something they talk about in the hospital before you go home with that baby.
Yes, because then that's the other question is, okay, so for my kids, when they look back on their childhood, how do I want them to remember their childhood? Because I can tell you, for me, my childhood was not, and nobody's is roses and, I don't know, lilies. Like, nobody has a perfect childhood. But what I can tell you about, I specifically was raised with my mother in my home. And what I can tell you marked her and still marks her to this day is I could come to her with anything and I knew she was safe. And so when I think about her life, she was intentional so that in my teenage years, when I needed to come in and talk to her in the evening and she was sitting in her bed reading a book, she closed that book, she set it down, and she was available to me. When I spoke to her, she intentionally kept that poker face and stayed calm so that I could say what I needed to say, What about you? What do you think about when you think about your childhood? Was there anything that your parents did intentionally where you remember, this about my childhood?
I remember they showed up. Like, whenever I was in something or did something, they both worked full-time jobs. They were gone all day long, and they showed up.
Wow.
They never wanted to miss something.
Okay. That's cool.
And I think that's what I want to do for my kids now, too. I don't want to miss things.
Yeah.
I want to show up.
Yeah. Okay, I love that.
And I think my mom rang a cowbell, too, so I
That's
do think
amazing.
I do think that got passed down to me, so,
Well, and just like I got to see your mom today and watching her, the way she encourages with so much vigor. It's not just like, hey, you did a good job. It is like, stop down.
It's a little mini speech.
Let me tell you how amazing you are. And you leave just feeling like, but Rebecca, that is a legacy that she has passed on to you because you are that way. You're a developer of people. You're an encourager of people. You see people and you cheer them on. And so I love that her intentionality is now reflected in yours.
Well, and that's so interesting to me because was she intentional with that? Are there some things that end up becoming who we are that we didn't realize at the moment we were being intentional about?
Yes.
But then they become this thing that we're like, oh, yes, now I want to be intentional with that because I see the fruit of it.
Yes. And so that's the piece where intentionality, I think we begin with the end in mind, but that we remember that, just like James Clear says in Atomic Habits, that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So we always have to remember that we want to put into place practices and systems that are going to help us when we're tired, when we're worn down, continue to make the choices to become the person that we want to become. So, for example, think about, is there anything that you do every day without having to think about it?
Make my spark.
Okay. You just automatically do that.
Automatically.
All right. Now, I want you to think back, though, to when you started drinking Spark. Okay, for those that don't know, Spark is a little bit of an energy. Is it a health drink? Do we put it in the health drink category?
It's definitely a health drink.
Oh, okay.
It's a healthy choice that I make every day. Yes, it is.
So do you remember what propelled you to start drinking Spark?
I was tired and we weren't coffee drinkers. And so I was like, I need something to help get me going in the morning.
Okay. And when you started, did you remember every day?
No. It takes time.
Okay. That's my whole point with intentionality is I think typically the way that we become intentional with something is we recognize an issue. You recognize, hey, I'm more tired than I want to be. Like, this is not the person who I want to be. I want to be a person that has more energy, that's present for my kids during the day. So then you make a decision. Okay, now I'm going to make an investment and I'm going to start buying this product.
Oh, it's an investment too. I'm telling you, that ain't cheap.
So you make an investment and you say, okay, I'm going to make a change. And there's a little pain there. Anytime we start making a change and we add in a new habit or behavior, there's a little bit of pain and tension. And you may do it one day and you feel good, and then the next day you're like, dang, I forgot to make my spark. But over time, the more that you continue to repeat that habit, it just becomes something that you don't even think about anymore.
Right.
Like, think about all the time that we spend reminding our kids to brush their teeth when they're little. You know, like, it's
Yes.
like every day. Did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your teeth?
I think teenagers too, we still have to remind them.
Okay.
Okay.
But now, as a grown woman,
Nobody reminds you.
nobody's reminding you to brush your teeth because you know you want to be a person who has good, healthy teeth. And you've been brushing your teeth now for 40 years. And so you just do it twice a day without anybody having to remind you. So there's little things like that. There's just practices we have in place. Like, when you become an adult and you have your own mailbox for the first time, you might forget to go check the mail because it's not, your parents always did it.
Yeah.
But then at some point, you just start checking the mail every day. Like, you just do it.
I feel like when this podcast airs in 20 years, people are going to be like, what's a mailbox?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
We're totally dating ourselves here.
Or like for us on Tuesday mornings, when we first moved into this house, there was a new trash schedule. And for a little bit on Tuesday mornings, we would wake up and we'd hear the trash truck at 8
And you
a.m.
make a beeline in your robe. You're like, stop.
Yes. I have on my nightgown, no bra. You're running out there to try and get that trash can out, And now we have a system.
Yes.
And so nobody's flying by the seat of their pants. We're just getting that trash can out when it needs to get out. And so that is what intentionality is. Intentionality is recognizing, hey, this is an issue, or this is a problem, or I'm seeing something in my home, in myself, that I don't like or I feel like is missing. And so I'm going to make a change in order to make it work. I just shared on social not that long ago, and it was the silliest analogy, but people kept complimenting me on my eyelashes, and they were saying, your eyelashes look so great, And then I realized, oh, yeah, it's because I've been using my serum. And this eyelash serum that I use, when you start out, you apply it every night, and it was just like your Spark. It was expensive. But I have 5 hairs. And so my eyelashes are the same. They're like very thin
She
and
has
fine.
more than 5, y'all. She's being dramatic.
They're very thin and fine. And so I would just get so frustrated trying to put mascara on because, it's like, okay, well,
You're
where
just
does
trying
that
to find
go?
them.
Yeah,
Where
just
are
some
they?
little nubs, So I was like, I'm going to try this serum. But you have to apply it every night for 6 weeks
Before it does anything?
you start to see anything. And so you just apply with hope. You're just applying.
Do you have to buy more than 1 bottle in 6 weeks? I feel like this is
No.
a marketing scam.
No.
Okay.
I buy 1 bottle a year.
Okay.
And then once it's out, then then I go for a while. Then I'm like, oh, I've got nubs again. And then I buy a new bottle.
Okay.
But now that I've done it a couple times, I know that I just have to apply with hope because those things are going to grow. And that's exactly what intentionality is like. That we are just out here, we're saying, okay, I know this thing needs to change. So you may be looking at your life and you're saying, okay, I need to be more intentional about my health. I feel like trash. I am struggling to get out of bed in the morning. I am having to drink coffee all day. My clothes aren't fitting well. My hair's falling out. Like, all kinds of things happen to women.
Ooh, I've heard these things all in the last 2 weeks from people. Yes.
And so then you have to go, okay, I need to be more intentional about my health. Which means, ma'am, that then you have to start making some phone calls and make doctor's appointments. You have to start investigating. You're going to need to try some new supplements, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you make the decision to say, this is not working. I want to be a healthy person, so I'm going to make votes. I'm going to put deposits in the bank to be that person. I'm going to make these decisions.
I like that you said apply with hope. Like, that's an interesting concept to me because that really is a lot of life. Like, we don't necessarily see results right away.
Yes.
We just have to keep applying with hope.
Yes.
But that's so biblical.
It is, because it's Galatians 6:9, and that's why I have my scripture sitting right here, because it's Galatians 6:9. And, I love this scripture because it says, Well, I'm trying to get to it, but it says, let us not get tired of doing good, for we will reap at the proper time if we don't give up. And that's the idea of applying with hope. And I love this idea from the scriptures because it's this farming concept, and farmers get applying with hope.
Oh, they got so much hope.
Because they're putting those seeds in the ground, this soil that they've worked, they're putting these seeds in the ground.
And then you don't see nothing.
They're watering, they're fertilizing, they're watering, they're fertilizing for a long time before a little bitty green shoot starts to come through the ground.
Right.
And then they wait until the fruit comes and they get to harvest all of their hard work.
Right.
And so it's just the same with us. And so, for our mamas, it may be intentionality with their health. It may be intentionality with screens. It may be that you're looking around your home and, if you walked out in your living room right now, you would see a kid on a phone. You go to a room, there's a kid on a computer. You go to another room, there's a kid on a TV. And some of that in moderation, that's fine. But you may be looking and going, this is becoming all-consuming, or we're not spending enough time together. They are getting more time with their screens than they are getting with like real people interaction.
Yes.
And you go, okay, we're going to be intentional in this area. And you make a plan and you start applying with hope. And eventually you're going to see the fruits of that.
It's such a good conversation to have too. When I think about, some of our life is very scheduled. Like we have things we have to show up for and do. But then we're about to hit summer where the schedule kind of goes out the window.
Yeah.
And if you go into it without any intentionality, it quickly gets away from you. And then you're having to like reel it back in. So this whole idea of kind of thinking ahead to apply with hope, that by the time I get to the end of the summer, I look back and go, oh, that was great.
Yeah. Well, and so something that we do in our family is as summer starts, we sit down and we go, okay, what are your goals for summer? Remember at church one time we did an initiative where it was called Intentional Summer. And that really helped me think about, okay, we have an opportunity here where these kids are home for a couple of months and we can lean in some areas that we may not normally have time to lean in on. And so we sit down and make goals with them and kind of come up with a plan. And so that we can look back on the end of summer and see fruit there.
Yeah. And I love that you said opportunity too, because the whole idea behind intentionality is that there's something out there that you could grasp onto if you wanted, but if you don't, it's just going to float away and you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And so when you see health as an opportunity, when you see time as an opportunity, when you see summer as an opportunity, it's like, listen, there's some good out there for you to go get, but you have to be intentional to get it.
Yes. I think the other big one that I want to make sure that we talk about is our spiritual lives, and that we need to make sure that we're being intentional in those spaces with our children. And so that can look a lot of different ways, for our mamas, but we want to have some systems in place where we are having regular spiritual practices. And so this may be the one, I think, for a lot of our moms where they're like, okay, that has all felt so overwhelming to me that I've never implemented regular spiritual systems because it feels like your ideal is like, we're all sitting down on a Saturday morning and having an hour-long devotional, and you've tried to do that before and you ended up screaming at everybody and it was terrible. So you're like, we're not doing that again. So I just wonder for you what it could be. Something that we've been intentional about in our home is whoever gets up first, Jeremy or I, we go turn on praise and worship music on the device in the kitchen that you can hear over the whole house. And what I have loved is the intentionality of that small choice has meant that the climate and the atmosphere of our home in the morning is completely different. And I will walk out to go get my coffee, and because I've made the intentional choice of setting it the night before, and I go to get my coffee and I hear that praise and worship music and it just starts my heart in the right direction. And so that may be an intentional choice that you could make, is starting your day with praise and worship music. It could be that you have some little ones and you guys start reading the Jesus Storybook Bible together in the evenings. And so as you're putting them down for bed and you're reading, that you read that. And I can tell you as a grown woman, I will still read Jesus Storybook Bible, and my teenagers still love it. And you can pull them all together, and it's a 5-minute, 7-minute choice.
Yeah.
But that you're just making that choice to implement that spirituality in that moment. I think there's some other easy, small things to do. When you see emergency vehicles on the road, that you just say, hey, everybody, we're going to pray for this person that's in crisis, and you pray for them, so that slowly over time, then your kids, you say, hey, you see that? Will you pray? And then they're going to start doing it all on their own without you ever having to say anything. I think you could potentially have scriptures that you're praying over them or memorizing as a family, that you can make fun. Like, start thinking about how could we be intentional that we are doing what it talks about in Deuteronomy, that we're having spiritual conversations as we go. This does not have to be some crazy, you're not taking your kids to seminary. You are just making sure that you are intentionally putting God before them, so that when you eat a really great meal, you say, oh, thank you, God, the giver of good gifts. That you're helping your kids. You're being intentional about your kids seeing God, knowing God, viewing the world through a biblical lens. I think that's the area, if I was going to encourage moms in anything, to just stop and say, what small change could I make in order to be more intentional with how we are growing our family spiritually?
It makes me think about our family values study that we
Yeah.
did, because the great thing about it was one thing a month.
Yeah.
And that feels so much more doable than like 12 goals for the summer.
Yes.
But like one a month, one in June, July, and August,
Yeah.
where instead of trying to create this total like schedule shift of everything's different, it's just taking one idea that you're like, hey, let's be more kind this month. And then everything just kind of fits in that funnel.
Yes.
And really, you can almost make anything happening in the day go towards whatever your topic is for that month.
Yeah.
And for a mom, with busy kids, and even if you've got a busy summer, because some of us have busy summers with camps and vacations and stuff, and you're thinking, I don't have time. Yes, you do. You can actually do this.
Yeah.
It's not like an unreachable goal.
I agree. And so let me just say, if you wanted to do family values, you can find that on Amazon. And then, like what Rebecca's saying, there's 12 biblical values they're biblical character values that we're trying to pass along to our children. And so you could pick 3. It could be resilience, kindness, responsibility. And you take each month and you read that lesson, and there's all these very practical ideas of how you can do that with your family. And then you just spend the month of June talking about kindness. Mm-hmm. And you do acts of kindness together. And, you could do it where it's a theme, where you're thinking about a theme. A couple of other ideas would just be like, as you're putting your kids to bed at night, that you're saying a scripture over them. As you head to school in the morning, you guys are praying on the way to school. Like, there's just some little things that you can do in order to be intentional there. I think that when we do that, when we start to make those decisions, like we said, there's going to be some pain in the moment. It might cost you a little something. You're probably going to forget. But if you will stay with it, you will look back in a year or so and go, oh, wow, we have been doing this consistently now for 2 years. And how did that even happen? Well, because you made one small decision, and then one more small decision, and then one more small decision. And so if we can remember to brush our teeth every day and not even think about it, you can do some of these things every day where it just becomes something that is a healthy part of your life. And I want to encourage you. I mean, this is exactly what we're doing with Good Day Gather. That was our whole thing is, we've got this May-cember that we call it coming up. May is the sneaky December of the spring, where we've got Mother's Day and graduations and end of school things. I mean, is your calendar full right now with the end of school things?
Listen, it gets fuller every day, because every day I get an email with a new thing that I have not added to the calendar that must be added to the calendar. I'm like, how many things can we have on one day?
Hey, and can I say to you, the kids are getting out of school really early.
It feels early. It feels super early.
I'm like, keep them. Can you keep them?
Listen, Judd told me they were getting out on a Thursday, and I was like, no, you're not. We always get out on a Friday. He's like, no, Mom, I think it's a Thursday this year. I'm like, how dare they? How dare they not make them go till Friday? What are we doing?
Honestly, I think it's like May 23rd. And I'm like, rude. Memorial Day, friends. Memorial Day. You need to go a little longer. But it just, they come home and it's like, it can kind of, you're already filling up your calendar, and then they come home and you're sweaty and there's just a lot. It can just feel like a lot. And so I know that for myself, a lot of times I get to the end of May and I just kind of feel, oh.
Yeah.
because as these new things come in, a lot of my good habits start slipping
Yes.
because I'm just kind of trying to keep up. And so that's really what we want to do with Good Day Gather is say, okay, wait a minute. It doesn't have to be this way. If we were intentional with how we spend this month, then we could actually end the month by being like, okay, I'm better than I was when I started it.
Yes.
And now I have some really good habits to help me going into the summer to now have a healthy, successful summer.